sold the idea that financial independence is all about some number on your account statement, or even worse, that you don't qualify because of where you started out. That's just not true. It's not about some well-kept secret of the wealthy. It's about finding the right information and knowing how to apply it. On the Get Ready for the Future show, we're answering your questions so you can start making real financial change today. The journey to true financial independence begins right here, and it starts with you.
Hey, whether you're watching online or listening on radio or podcast, we are glad to have you along, and it is my pleasure to welcome you in to another edition of the Get Ready for the Future show. My name is Scott Inman, along with me, GenWealth co-founder Janet Walker, to answer your questions today about finance, anything money related, and we've got some good ones to talk about this week, so we'll settle in and get right to it in just a moment. But one table setter, as I looked out over the questions this week, Janet, was I was looking at the ages of all of the people who asked questions this week, and it dawned on me they're all Gen Xers. Generation Xers.
We like Gen Xers around here. You and I are both Gen Xers.
We are both. And so the definition loosely of that is if you were born between 1965 and 1980. So it's very interesting and a little bit alarming knowing that we are Gen Xers, that the front end of our generation is turning 60 this year.
Yeah.
That's hard to believe.
I didn't need you to do that math for me.
But we're young Gen Xers.
We're young. We'll go with
Gen
that.
Xers.
We'll go with that.
At least somewhere in the
Younger.
middle. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was reading some interesting information on this, and we've talked about some of these things before on the show, but there's a big difference in attitude about retirement between baby boomers and Gen Xers, and there's a lot of reasons for that. The primary one is baby boomers during their work life likely had access to a pension. They were all over the place back then. The 401k came around really as Gen Xers were coming of age, and then the pensions went away as they began their major career lives. And so the shift really occurred during our generation from pension to 401k, but unfortunately there wasn't a lot of education that went with it.
Right. It was just a change in how your retirement was going to be funded without a, hey, by the way, and your parents didn't know to have the conversation with you because they didn't see it coming either. So you're right, Scott, there's been a tremendous shift between those two generations in preparing for retirement, and we see a difference as a result of that in how people feel about how they're going to approach retirement, how they feel about their confidence, lots of aspects.
Yeah, so one piece of that article that I was reading, the attitude of Gen Xers, they do typically like the DIY life more than the previous generation. They do it themselves, and that does apply to a lot of their investing and planning for retirement. But at the same time, they were the generation of all generations, not just in comparison to baby boomers, but even the younger generations behind us as Gen Xers. The Generation X is less likely to be confident about their retirement. So that really is quite a dynamic there when you consider they are less likely to be confident about retirement, but at the same time want to do it themselves.
Yeah, that is an interesting dynamic to me, because to me, like, I grew up on a farm. There's a lot of things around the house that I'll do on my own, partly because probably I'm a Gen Xer, but partly because I grew up on a farm, and if it was broken, you fixed it and went on. And so I grew up that way, but I do have my limits. Like, there are things that might be dangerous, like I'm about to call somebody to have some limbs cut, because I'll do them down low and smaller, but this is beyond what I can safely do, so I'm going to call somebody. And then there are other things that I just don't need to be messing with, because I'll mess it up and then have to call somebody, So, but the rest of it I'll do on my own. And the thought of handling retirement, Scott, even for you and for me, we are financial advisors, but we have someone else come alongside us for our personal retirement planning, because it is so easy to look at it from an emotional standpoint when it's your own money rather than a logical standpoint. And so even doing this for lots of other people, we have somebody come alongside us. We don't DIY our own retirement.
Yeah. So kudos to all of our people bringing in the questions today, reaching out for some help along the way. And if you are doing it yourself, whether you're the people that sent in the question today or you're listening or watching today, think about the guidance of a financial advisor in your trip and your journey toward true financial independence and the impact that could have. But free education today on the Get Ready for the Future show as we dive in. Our first question, James from Bryant. I'm 58 and I still owe about $72,000 on my mortgage. We've got around $650,000 saved between my 401k and my wife's IRA. I'd like to retire at 62. Should we work to pay off the house first or keep investing and carry the mortgage into retirement? Great question. You got about 4 years there, what I'm seeing, James, until you are going to pull the trigger on your retirement date, and you have about $72,000 to wipe out on the mortgage. So not a huge piece to that, and you're probably on track to get pretty close, and it's certainly going to go away, I would think, if you kept up making the payments you're making now early into retirement. But it's a big question. Should you rush to pay off the house or ride into retirement with a mortgage? It's a question with more layers than you might think. So let's walk through that. Ideally, first of all, we are certainly in favor of entering retirement with no mortgage if possible. But we also don't want to sacrifice future retirement contributions just to become mortgage free. So I think the first step here for us, Janet, and for James is we've got to determine if James and his wife are on track for true financial independence.
Yeah, so let's talk about what does that look like to figure out if you are on track or not for your own financial independence. The first step is to build a plan and put together your current contributions, the existing balance that you have in there, and then your future contributions that you're going to do between now and retirement, and see where that puts you. And then we can take out some of those future contributions in the calculation. And let's say that we instead put that money towards the mortgage, and let's just look at where things stand at that point. So assuming a conservative rate of return between 58 and 62, so over the next 4 years, just determine what that looks like for your future retirement assets. And keep in mind that because that is a very short period of time in the investment world, 4 years before you get to retire sounds forever, but 4 years in the investment world is a very short period of time. So a lot of things can happen there. I would say not only making sure that you're on track, but also positioning your assets so that if we have a significant pullback between now and your age 62, that you are still on track, regardless of what you decide to do ultimately about the mortgage or not.
Yeah, that's a great point when you think about 4 years from now. If he is invested in too much risk, that $650 could be worth about $450 if we had a really significant downturn in the market. So getting the plan together to diversify that portfolio properly, setting up a good piece of that $650 in a conservative investment that can give you distributions that are not dependent on what happens in the stock market is big there. But the contribution rate could be tweaked a little over the next 4 years if you are on track for true financial independence. And, we're going to need to know a lot more about you, James, to determine that. $650,000 is a nice nest egg, but what do you have in other income sources? What Social Security look like for your guaranteed income? Are there other guaranteed income sources that can supplement what you're going to be taking out from your savings? That's a big question. And I think if you need to carry a mortgage into retirement, in your case, it won't be carried for very long. So you could potentially even develop the retirement income plan to have more coming to you early on to make sure that the mortgage is taken care of. And then if it's going to be phased out in 5 years or 10 years, you can pull that down a little bit because you won't need as much with no mortgage.
Scott, one caution that I would share with James for sure is to be careful about utilizing your 401k assets to actually pay this down. Now, that was not indicated in your question, but sometimes people will go there. They're like, I've got this $650,000 over here and I only owe $72,000. Let me make a withdrawal. It's not going to be very long before you're 59 and a half, and so you'll be past the time period where you would have penalties for early withdrawal, but you would still have taxes, albeit without penalty. You would still have taxes due on the distribution. It raises your overall tax bracket. And more importantly to me, you're losing the future investment power of that money, because we've talked about the 4-year time period. But we haven't talked about you will likely be in retirement maybe 30 years. And so some of those $650,000 that you have in there, some of those dollars are going to have to be future investment money long term, even though your short term time horizon to the beginning of retirement. So we need to have the ability to let those assets grow in the future so that you continue to have enough money to keep up with inflation for your retirement income.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too, just to close this out for James, is there somewhere else you can look to pull back from to create more dollars going towards that mortgage? It doesn't necessarily have to be, I wouldn't think, the retirement contributions that you pull back from or the investing side. Is there somewhere else you can cut some expenses, create some more margin between your income and expenses, and throw a little bit more at that mortgage? But I think you're in a good spot at $72,000 in principal with still 4 years to go. You've got a good shot at working out a plan to get rid of it, at least in the early years of retirement. But I think you need to visit with a financial advisor, one that creates retirement income plans akin to the ones we were just talking about, so you can specifically know what your income's going to be in retirement and be able to create a plan to accelerate the mortgage payoff, whether it hits at 62 on the nose or 65 years old, 66 years old. So thanks for the question, James. Want to remind everyone you can subscribe to our YouTube channel for exclusive content you can't find anywhere else to help you discover, protect, and share true financial independence. That's what we're about here at GenWealth Financial Advisors. And if you just search for us on YouTube, GenWealth Financial Advisors, you'll find all sorts of content there, including past Get Ready for the Future shows if you'd like to watch it. And next up on the program, it's somebody that I think probably has been watching us online, because the radio doesn't go to North Carolina that we're aware of.
That's right.
Podcast maybe does, obviously. Patrick, via email from North Carolina, 46-year-old small business owner, in parentheses says 1 employee plus part-time guy, currently max a Roth out and have done so for years. What is the next step to set more away for retirement? SEP, simple, brokerage, high-yield savings account. Assume 20 years of account growth will offset any additional tax hits. Packed a lot into that question, Patrick. Thanks very much. Good question, though. How do you grow tax-smart wealth when you're the boss and the payroll? So let's walk through the smartest next steps and the trade-offs you don't want to overlook. He makes a mention there to the offsetting the additional tax hits. He's rolling out Janet with some Roth dollars here, and that's going to be tax-free in retirement. I do think the first piece too, Patrick, you didn't tell us if you're married or not. If you're married, you can actually max out a Roth for your spouse too, even if she doesn't have income, because you're filing a joint return. So that's something to consider to get some more tax-free growth going. But what about the tax-deferred growth? Because there are some benefits right now. He mentions the SEP and the simple. I think it's good to go through a comparison. He may have already done that, but for the other viewers and listeners, let's talk about the differences between a SEP IRA and a simple IRA. Both could be an option here for Patrick.
So, Scott, one of the reasons we really like the SEP is that it allows you to contribute a lot more under the right circumstances. So it is definitely not always the right answer, but here's the way the rules are currently on the SEP. You can contribute the lesser of 25% of the employee's compensation, or $70,000. And you're going to get tax deferral on that, obviously, from the employer contribution. And all employees and the owner of the business, this is key, must receive contributions at the same percentage. So this is what either many times encourages people to use a SEP or discourages them from using a SEP. So if you have, let's say you have half a dozen people, and they are family members who are also really working hard in the business, then you're like, absolutely, I want them to have this for their future retirement, and I want to be sure that I'm really taking care of my people. And they don't even have to be family members, just using that as an example. But if you have people who are really working hard for you, you probably don't struggle with doing this. But keep in mind that they are not making any contributions from their own payroll. It is just from the employer's, from the business money, that the money is going to be funding this SEP. So the flip side of that is maybe you've got half a dozen people and 3 of them are really great team members and 3 of them aren't. Then in that case, as a business owner, to be real transparent, I wouldn't want to fund that, because I would be giving free money to people that are not really working hard for the business. So you want to look at it that way. And I know in his case, Patrick, you've got one employee plus a part-time person. So it's not a lot of monetary obligation if you're paying whatever percentage for you as you're paying for them. You don't have a whole lot of people on the list for that.
Yeah, so determining between a SEP and a simple, I think, is, first of all, I wouldn't get too caught up in one being right and one being wrong. I think it's really your preference on some of the considerations that Janet talked about. The SEP IRA, you could potentially, depending on what you pay yourself, get more into because of the higher limit. The simple is going to cap you currently at your age at $16,500 annually. You'll be able to get catch-up dollars in of $3,500 additional when you turn 50, the year you turn 50, and there's no additional catch-up for the SEP, so that's going to be what that's going to be. You probably would be putting in less for the employee on the simple side, but you do have to match the employee for 3%, and there may be a tax credit for employers who set up a simple, but that's not going to be significant either. It's a small tax credit, so that would not be a deciding factor for me either. The bottom line here, both plans are easy to set up and to manage. No difference really there. They have the same tax advantages really and the same age rules as far as when you can withdraw the funds without penalty, being 59 and a half. They have the same. They can have the same investments no matter what you set up too. I think that's a misconception. May not be for you, Patrick, but a lot of times we have clients in who think there are certain investments available in this kind of account and this kind of account that are not in others. You can self-direct either the SEP IRA or the simple. You can work with an advisor in either. We have clients who have SEPs. We have clients who have simples. There is a little bit more to the enrollment on the simple side as opposed to just basically having an account application on the SEP side. So that's easier from the financial firm's perspective. I don't know that it's really any different for the actual participant. And I would consider this if you want to contribute monthly, because you could take advantage of dollar cost averaging. Of course, that's the concept of if you're putting in the same amount of money on a monthly basis and the market is volatile and goes down, you're actually buying more shares when the market's down, which could, it's not guaranteed, but it could add to your overall return rather than putting in one lump sum once a year. I would have to ask you, don't know for sure, but if you're going to do that, it might be easier to do that from the simple because the SEP is tied to your income. And I will say, Janet, in the clients I have who have a SEP, they don't often know what their income is going to be till the end of the year. Yeah,
it's not set like as a business owner that you know that this is your salary and so this is exactly what I'm going to make, so I know what I can contribute. That income is not determined, like you said, Scott, until much closer to the end of the year. And so what we see in a SEP many times is that people don't contribute throughout the year. They contribute in one lump sum at the end of the year. And so what they're missing, as you've indicated, is that dollar cost averaging. Think about the volatility that we've had in recent months and weeks here, that you have the opportunity as the market goes down at any point that you're investing when that amount is lower. It's at a lower cost per share, and so you get more shares. And so you do completely lose that if you are having to wait until the end of the year.
So a couple pieces, too. He mentioned the brokerage account and the high-yield savings account. He does indicate in the question he's 46 and he's assuming 20 years of growth. So if you're not planning to retire prior to 59 and a half, then the advantages of the brokerage kind of pull off the table for retirement purposes anyway. I love having non-retirement money for the intermediate goals. Certainly there's some advantages there, but that's going to be a taxable account. So I think for the retirement question, if you know you're going to work past 59 and a half and not want to access the funds, I would lean more towards the employer plans, the SEP and the simple, than the brokerage. And then for the high yield savings account, that's really more of a risk level discussion. High yield savings accounts are getting a lot of attention right now because of where they are in terms of interest rates. They're not going to stay there forever, but that's for short-term money. I think I can't say that specifically enough. You don't want retirement money if you're not retiring for 20 years sitting in a high-yield savings account, because long-term we believe in the market, and those interest rates may look pretty attractive right now, especially when you watch the market go all over the place and go haywire. But I think for short-term money, put some money in the high-yield savings account, your emergency fund, money you know you're going to be pulling out to buy a car in the next year. That's great, but for retirement, we would look more long-term than that.
Well, and your emergency fund for your business, we do that at GenWealth. Having a high-yield savings account for the business emergency fund is a good call.
Yeah. All right, Patrick, hope you got some good advice there. And again, good education, I should say, not specific advice. But if you're looking for some specific advice, you can reach out to us and we can walk through the GenWealth Ready to Retire process with you or anybody else who is interested. You can call us toll free, 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526 to get an appointment with a GenWealth financial advisor. That first appointment is always free. And we're going to name your question the question of the week, Patrick. We want to thank you for reaching out, and we're going to send you a free Get Ready for the Future Show tumbler. We are modeling that on the set right there, if you call that modeling. We just need you to send us an email. If you would, send us an email to show@getreadyforthefuture.com to claim it, and we'll know where to send it. Next up on the Get Ready for the Future show, it's Hannah via email. My husband and I are both 55. We've got about $950,000 combined in traditional IRAs and old 401ks. We keep hearing about Roth conversions. You've been listening to this show, you probably heard about it.
Yeah, that's true.
How do we know if it makes sense to start doing that now, especially before RMDs kick in? I think we get a Roth conversion question about once a week these days, it feels like. Determining whether to do a Roth conversion, Hannah, is about two things: time and taxes. I think that's the jumping off point as we get in here. But I think the time piece is really not terribly working in Hannah's favor, at least from the traditional way we would think of it.
Yeah.
She would have, if she didn't touch those dollars, she might have a long time for that to grow. But the point here is once you've converted and pay your taxes, you've got a long time for that tax-free growth to occur. So this works best when somebody in their 30s, maybe even in their 40s, leaves a job that maybe they haven't even been in that long, Janet, and they've got just a lump sum rollover of a 401k that they can convert, pay the taxes that year, and rock on in a Roth.
And even if it's a larger amount, we might have them convert smaller amounts each year until it gets done. But you're right, the timeline with them both being age 55, that is one of those questionable timelines. Here's a general concept. This is not absolutely set in stone, but if somebody has fewer than 5 years, we're not going to recommend the conversion. Fewer than 5 years before retirement, and certainly fewer than 5 years before utilizing the assets. And then if they have more than 10 years, it is usually something we want to consider, but we still are going to look at the tax factor on this before we say absolutely to do it. But between that 5-year time period, it is a very blurry line, and we have to really get into the details of what your situation tells us in your individual circumstances. So we do want to keep in mind as we kind of talk through the details on this only applies to traditional IRAs. So if it's pre-tax IRA, it's all going to be taxable in the year that you convert. And I saw somebody come in, Scott, years ago to see us, and they had, before they came to us, they had been told to convert their traditional IRA, and it was over $300,000 that they converted in 1 year in their 40s. Y'all, the tax impact on that, because you've got to come up with those taxes separately, like outside of the $300,000 that they converted, they had to come up with that tax money out of pocket to be able to pay it. They were able to do that. Most people are not. Most people only have that type of dollar amount inside of their retirement assets, and that's just not where you're going to be able to go to pay the taxes. So definitely something that you want to think through in terms of how much is converted and how you're able to pay those taxes.
Yeah, and another piece to this, she talks about, especially before RMDs kick in. Well, here's the reality for you and your husband. At 55, it's a long time before your RMDs are going to kick in. Anybody born 1960 or later, it's 75 now. The RMD age is going to be 75. So you've got 20 years. So yeah, I get it. If you don't pull any money out of those IRAs for 20 years and that $950,000 doubles, right?
Yeah.
You do have a big RMD problem. But Roth conversions, Janet, are not the only way to go about this. And this brings us back to the retirement income plan conversation, because when you retire, you can begin to take a withdrawal from your IRA and use that money, yeah, you're going to pay taxes on it, but guess what? You're going to do that if you convert it to a Roth. You're going to keep it invested that way, and it's going to be tax-free. But if the main worry here is, oh, I'm going to have an RMD problem later in life, why not begin to implement a withdrawal strategy well before you turn 75?
Absolutely. And one of the other things I think about is inside of the old 401ks, we need to look at that and make sure that they are all, that this all indicates in the question that those are all pre-tax dollars, but you may have some Roth dollars in the 401k, and then we're not talking about $950,000 of pre-tax money. It's some lesser amount than that.
Yeah, so I do think if you really want to not spend the dollars and not make a withdrawal and use the money, which I do think the planning process will help us understand how much are you going to need to spend on a monthly basis. So those withdrawals come to you, you pay the taxes. But typically speaking, as we get people really on the cusp of retirement, if they're still working and those conversion dollars are stacked on top of your other income, it could really be a tax problem for you to do that. But if you build a retirement income plan, you'll know what you're going to be living on in the first couple of years of retirement, which tends to be significantly less than when you were in your employment years. That might be the best time to consider converting some of those dollars because you have more room, more wiggle room in the tax bracket. So again, it all points back to the plan, Hannah. Building that plan will give you the answers of how much you can convert and when and how advantageous it would be for you. We want to remind you once again that you can subscribe to our YouTube channel for exclusive content you can't find anywhere else to help you discover, protect, and share true financial independence. Just search for GenWealth Financial Advisors on YouTube. We've got time for one final question on this week's show, and it's from Christine in Jonesboro. Our daughter is 26 and struggling financially. So we've been helping her with $1,000 a month, but we're 59 and 61 and trying to save enough to retire at 67. We have around $600,000 in savings. How do we help her without hurting our own future? You certainly want to help your kids, Christine. Every parent does. But what if helping them today puts your retirement tomorrow at risk? So let's talk about balance. And Janet, we get this from time to time, and certainly it's a caring parent that wants to do this, but we really got to get at the source of the struggle, right? What let's define it. What are you saying is struggling financially? Is it they can't make their cell phone payment, or they don't have enough income for rent? Like there's some differences there, needs versus wants, that we have to talk about. And then really, the other piece of that is where are Christine and her husband on their path to true financial independence? Well,
and I think another aspect for the adult child, for their daughter, is to think about the why. Like, is it that the person is financially irresponsible, or is it that they have health issues? Like, are they really, really trying and just can't make it happen? And if so, is there something that you could do, like would working with a financial advisor help your daughter get to the point that she can be independent? Because here's the rest of the reality of this is, Scott, not only do Christine and her husband need to get ready for their own retirement, but in retirement, I guarantee you they're not going to be able to continue to help the daughter at $1,000 a month.
Right.
So how do we get on the other side of that from your daughter's perspective?
Yeah, you talked about the circumstances behind that. Is it health? Is it divorce? Does she have kids? Some things that really weren't her doing necessarily, or maybe weren't her doing, and could they be temporary, that she could get some education and grow through, or is this a long-term life habit that's going to be long-term for her and is really more significant than that? And really what we're getting at here is the bottom line is, are you helping her or are you enabling her? And certainly that's for you to decide, not for us to decide. But if you can determine that you really do just have to help her for a temporary part of her life while she gets through this short-term struggle, I would suggest there are some resources that we have available for younger people that could definitely help give your daughter some education financially and some motivation, I think, financially to get out of whatever problem she is and get on her feet. And it's a new program that we have just recently launched. And Jen, if you want to talk about it, it's called Spark.
Yeah, so Scott, we have, GenWealth is almost 20 years old, and in the entire history of GenWealth, and frankly, even before we formed GenWealth, John and I were looking for a way to serve young investors in the industry as a whole. If you don't have $250,000, it is common for you to just be cast aside. They will not even take you as a client. And so we felt like that was wrong. Like, everybody needs to start somewhere, and we wanted to provide a place where people could get education and they could start investing and get on their path to financial independence, which we believe is something that everybody has to have a vision for and a path to get to, your own financial independence. And so what we have ultimately been able to do is we've partnered with a company that has an app for us. The app is available for you regardless of, wherever you get your apps. Just go find this one. It is Spark Financial Wellness. And if you're watching us online, you can see a symbol of it. So you're looking for that yellow square, the blue letters for Spark. And then there are some screenshots of some of the things that you can do. This app will walk her through the 10 financial tenets of financial planning. And it really does guide you step by step in what you need to be able to do financially. And it kind of acts as a coach. And then we are, as advisors, coming alongside anybody who's using the app. There are times when you will need to reach out for help, and the app will prompt you to do that, and we are here for you. So it's kind of this combination, which I think is great for your 26-year-old daughter, because that generation would frankly rather do things on the screen at 2 a.m. in the morning if they want to, or whenever it's convenient for them, than to come into a meeting. She's not having to miss work. So we make all of that available, and then have the support from an advisor when it's necessary. So check that out. Phenomenal program that we are super excited about.
Yeah, we are so excited about it that we've talked about some of our younger clients we have now who are going to be able to take advantage of this. And you've pointed out, and I've since had the conversation with my son, our kids are going to this because we believe in it so much. And when I think about my son, he's going to be 25 this year, so not too far off from 26 years old. I wouldn't say he's struggling financially. He's on his own, up on his feet. He's contributing to a Roth IRA, but to this point in his journey, that's about all he's been doing, right? We're investing his dollars. It's growing great. Everything's working fine, but he's going to need to buy a house someday, save for a down payment. Some motivating things exist in this program that I think will definitely benefit my son. And if it's good enough for my son, I certainly have no problem recommending it for everybody else.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So we're super excited about it. So Christine, I would encourage you to have your daughter check that app out for sure.
Yeah. Boy, some good questions today from all of our folks that sent a question in. And I do want to remind you as we walk up on our time for our final thoughts that if there's anything that sparked a conversation or sparked a question for you listening to this conversation today, that you can always reach out and talk to a GenWealth financial advisor. It is really easy to do. You can call us toll free at 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526. Or you can send us an email. You can send it to show@getreadyforthefuture.com. You can, if you want to ask a little bit more about Spark before you get that app, if you want to ask some more questions about Roth conversions or best retirement accounts for self-employed business owners, we can certainly set up a first appointment with an advisor. And again, can't stress enough, it is a free first appointment. It's not going to cost you anything to have that conversation and get you some education. I feel like I may have just done my final thought because I blew right through that bell.
Because I'm going to hand it back to you in a minute.
All right.
But talking about the free first appointment, that app is also free. Let me talk to you about why we did that app. Our purpose is that we help people discover, protect, and share true financial independence. And so wherever you are on your journey to or through financial independence. We want to be able to come alongside you. The GenWealth difference is that we are education-driven, strategy-based, and team-delivered. So again, like in Christine's daughter's case, she may need that app to help her, but we also have a team behind us. So the education is going to come through the app and through our team, and we're going to be able to come alongside you and provide the details that you need personalized to your situation to help you discover, protect, and share true financial independence.
I've got less than 30 seconds, so I'll give you another opportunity for a free resource. We have 7 Steps to Financial Independence available to anyone who wants it. If you're looking how to take that next step for your true financial independence, just text the word STEPS to 501-381-5228. Again, the number 501-381-5228. Text the word STEPS to receive the free 7 Steps to Financial Independence. And that's all the time we have for this week's Get Ready for the Future show. Again, great questions. Keep them coming. Get a question to us. You can send it to that same number I just gave out, 501-381-5228. You can leave a voicemail, or you can just write a text, and we'll use it on next week's show.
The GenWealth financial team is available to you 24/7 at info@getreadyforthefuture.com or call our offices at 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526. You should personally consult a financial advisor before making any investment, and no strategy can assure success. Securities offered through LPL Financial. Member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through Independent Advisor Alliance. Independent Advisor Alliance and GenWealth Financial Advisors are separate entities from LPL Financial.